On this tonight, we go to independent journalist YAHAWAH, who has done extensive reporting over the years on Syria. Nice to have you with us.
Great to be on, Ed.
What do you make about this rush to judgment with really the lack of proof? And the last couple of days at the White House briefing, Sarah Huckabee Sanders has not been able to offer exacts, absolutes. Put it together for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the most important part of this is there has not been a proper investigation yet. So we don't know, A, if there was a chemical attack, and B, if there was one, who's responsible. So the rush to judgment is pretty absurd because you're talking about going to war and escalating against a country based on no evidence whatsoever. But beyond that, the timing of this is extremely suspicious because you have a situation where the Syrian government is in a very strong position. I would say a stronger position than it has been throughout this entire conflict. They were on the verge of defeating these rebels, these militant groups inside the suburbs of Damascus. They have no tactical benefit to launching a chemical weapons attack. It's a suicidal thing to do in a situation when they know that a chemical weapons attack would provoke international intervention. Meanwhile, the militants actually do benefit from this because they were on the verge of defeat, and the only thing that can save them is outside intervention. And on top of all of that, you have last week, the war hawks and pundits were having a meltdown because Trump announced he wanted to remove the U.S. presence from Syria. He wanted to pull U.S. troops out of Syria. And then days later, you have this alleged chemical attack, and now all of those same war hawks and pundits are invoking this chemical attack to insist that we stay in Syria indefinitely, and on top of that, that we escalate in Syria and potentially start a hot war with Russia in Syria, a nuclear power. So it's very dangerous what's taking place right now.
Okay, so this group that is going to be sent there, will they be able to make progress, and will it be done with credibility?
I mean, if they're allowed to, yes, but the problem is that you have Trump saying in the next 24 hours to 48 hours he's going to announce a military response in Syria. You also have John Bolton, who's now his national security advisor, who's a extremist, a neoconservative extremist, who wants to escalate against all of the countries that are involved in Russia, or I'm sorry, in Syria.
Give us a sense, Ronnie, of what the Syrian people are believing when they hear this. When they hear that it's been pinned on Russia, pinned on Assad, do they believe that, or what are their thoughts? Give us a sense on how they respond to that.
No, Syrians inside Syria don't. They generally speaking support. Whether they support their government, the people in power in their government is a different story. They support their state staying intact. And they see the U.S. as a player that for the last several years has tried to collapse the Syrian state by arming a collection of Salafi jihadist death squads in their country. So they don't trust anything that comes out of the mouths of U.S. officials. They see the U.S. as their enemy, especially right now, because if the U.S. bombs the government, they're essentially bombing the government side of Syria, which is where the vast majority of Syrians live. Mm-hmm. So they are on the side of their state.
So if Trump follows through with some type of airstrike, and some military experts are saying it's going to be targeted at depots, fuel depots, storage depots, fixed-wing aircraft, different targets than what we saw before. If that's the case, and we've heard President Putin say that there would be a response, where does that take us?
It takes us to essentially two nuclear-armed powers in a direct conflict with each other inside the country of Syria. It's very, very, very dangerous. And I don't think people who are cheering this on, which if you're watching CNN or MSNBC or other corporate outlets, people are cheering this on at the moment. I don't think they understand the gravity of what that means. That is very dangerous. You're talking about essentially like a World War III type situation.
What do you make of the lack of curiosity where the mainstream media in this country is failing to ask the question, how do you know?
Well, I want to know with the mainstream media that's very anti-Trump, I want to know why whenever it comes to wars that Trump wants to launch, such as this war in Syria that he wants to escalate, I want to know where this anti-Trump resistance is, because suddenly they become extremely supportive of the president. It's very bizarre.
YAHAWAH, always great to have you with us tonight. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ed.